the no plane theory. I've looked at it, and
Right.
it does look like there's with the video footage they show, and you know the way it goes in, it goes straight in like butter, and it's like aluminium going to steel. It doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
That to me, that's not, the videos don't look right. But of course, the more about the no plane theory, you know, there's more implications of it. Where, you know, what happened to the planes? Was there any planes with passengers? If you tell us more about, more flesh it out.
All that sort of area, really, yeah. And at the Pentagon, there weren't as many witnesses, and there aren't any real clear videos like there are at the World Trade Center. So we tend to look at those sort of separately in terms of the amount of evidence that we're working with. But there were no large pieces recovered at the Pentagon, no large plane pieces. In fact, there were no large plane pieces recovered at any of the sites. Certainly not on the day. So that's the first thing we can observe. And at the Pentagon, one of the classic things that people can look at is this report from the CNN reporter who's called Jamie McIntyre. And they say something to him like, you know, we understand there's been a plane crash at the Pentagon. And he said, well, that's what's you know been said, but I can't see any signs of a plane crash here. I'm here, you know, I can't see any large pieces. And he actually says this, and he has to go back later on. I think it was a couple of years later or something when people had pointed this out. He said he couldn't, and he actually sort of changed his story later on. So you have some problems there. And again, when you bring this up, as you said, if you say to somebody, let's stick with the Pentagon for now, well, there's no plane crash there, well, what happened to the passengers then? You know, are you telling me that those people, you know, didn't die in that plane crash? And the answer really is, if you start to think about this, is you have some planes taking off from airports in the US, because I think, these are all domestic flights, these are all internal US domestic flights. So we have this story that some planes took off and didn't land at where the airports, you know, that was stated. So really, we can't tell what happened to the planes once they left the runway, you know, and went out of sight into the sky. There are a number of things that could happen, but we as ordinary people don't really know. The other people that would know, people like the FAA, the Federal Aviation Authority, which would have radar tracks and that sort of thing. And NORAD, for example, that was spoken of as well. In this, you probably read about on the NORAD tapes and all this stuff, you know. And even if you get onto the NORAD tapes, for example, about the conversations between the tower and the passenger and the airliners and pilots, there's talk of those tapes being faked. That was in David Ray Griffin's book as well.
Is that the ones from going to the towers one? Because there was that Betty Ong, weren't they?
Right. Well, there's two separate things we're talking about here. There's NORAD tapes where I think there was some communications with the pilots, and then there were these alleged phone calls made from mobile phones. They're two separate kind of bits of evidence. But if you look into this, there's a lot of anomalies, and there's a lot of things that should be there that aren't, and some things that are there that shouldn't be there. Like, for example, the mobile phone calls themselves. They shouldn't be possible. Now, I was working with mobile communications in this area, actually. We did a project for Derbyshire Police back in the 90s, and it was just after the GSM system had come in, a couple of years after that. And this GSM system, which is the system that mobile phones use for their telephony, that would only work at speeds up to 144 miles an hour. And this is because the call is transmitted through various cells, and as you travel along the ground, your radio signal gets weaker and weaker, and then your call is then transferred to another cell tower because the signal is strong enough from that cell tower but not from the one you just left. And this is called handoff. This process is called handoff, where your call is passed without you even noticing to another cell tower, and you're actually sending and receiving to another cell tower. Now the problem is, if you go over a certain speed, you know, this handoff process no longer works properly. So the call will only last for 10 seconds or something, and then it will cut off because the technology can't handle the too rapid changing. So those phone calls could not have been made. Those phone calls from the passengers from their mobile phones were faked. Bye.